Welcome, American Tech Insider, to another deep dive. Today we're tackling, well, one of the most dynamic landscapes out there. Tech startups in 2025. You know, in a world just saturated with AI talk, how do you actually launch a tech venture that truly dominates? How do you build something lasting?
Yeah, that's the core question, isn't it? Our mission here is to sift through a whole stack of sources, market analyses, strategic playbooks, all that stuff. And we want to pull out the really important nuggets, give you a shortcut, basically, to understanding where the real defensible opportunities are in this incredibly fast-moving space. We're digging into how you spot those genuine market gaps and build something poised for, significant sustainable growth.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's jump right into the future then.
Yeah.
So, our sources are really highlighting this fundamental shift. We're moving beyond just generative AI to something called Agentic AI. What does that actually mean for founders, practically speaking, beyond the buzzwords?
All right, it's a great question. What's fascinating is Agentic AI isn't just like creating text or images anymore. It's about autonomous systems, systems that can independently plan, make decisions, execute complex tasks. Think of it like the dawn of a virtual workforce. Actually predicting a pretty dramatic increase here, from basically zero in 2024 to potentially 15% of everyday business decisions being made autonomously by these agents by 2028. It's a big leap.
Wow, so the product itself can become autonomous.
That's the idea. Imagine AI-driven consulting, or like you mentioned, these cyborg wealth advisors. They're not just tools, they act.
Okay, but that kind of power, it must create pushback, right? Or a new problem?
Exactly. And that leads to this critical counter-movement, this urgent demand for trust and security. Sources really hammer this home. It's not secondary, it's a primary market opportunity now. Things like AI governance platforms, to manage the ethical side, the operational performance. There's disinformation security, detecting deepfakes. That's exploding. Projections show maybe 50% of companies using these services by 2028, up from just 5% in 2024.
Huge jump.
Massive. And even things like post-quantum cryptography, PQC, basically future-proofing encryption against quantum computers down the line. Security is foundational. It's gotta be baked in, not just, sprinkled on top later.
Right, a prerequisite.
Yeah.
Okay, so if Agentic AI and this trust layer are the big tech wins, where's the money actually flowing for founders? Where should they be looking?
Well, the overall AI market itself is just a juggernaut. We're talking over, $370 billion in 2025?
Globally?
Yeah, and projected to hit maybe over 2.4 trillion by 2032. It's staggering. But the real juice, according to the sources, is at the intersections of these high-growth sectors, what they're calling super niching.
Super niches like combining different fields. Can you give an example?
Absolutely. Think about, say, personalized education, agentic AI, and mental wellness. You could build an AI tutor that doesn't just adapt teaching style, but maybe also spots early signs of student stress and offers tailored support proactively.
Huh, interesting. Less broad, more deep.
Precisely. Solving a very specific, very intense problem for a specific group.
Okay, but how do you know if your super niche idea is, well, viable? We hear all the time about startups failing.
Yeah, the stats are pretty sobering. Around 42% fail, because basically nobody really needed what they built. No market need. You absolutely have to identify what's called a Tier 1 problem.
Tier 1?
Meaning it has to be one of your potential customers' top, say, 3 most pressing issues. The stuff that genuinely keeps them up at night. If it's just a minor inconvenience, they won't find budget urgency for it. Need to solve real pain.
Got it. Find the real pain point. So once you think you've found that and maybe sketched out a solution, how do you prove it before you mortgage the house? And thinking longer term, what about setting up the business itself for investment, for protection?
Great questions. For proving it, this is where that whole lean startup idea, especially the minimum viable product, the MVP, really shines. But the key is, an MVP isn't just a stripped-down product. It's an experiment designed purely for learning. Think Dropbox. They used a simple explainer video first, right?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Got tens of thousands of signups. It validated the demand before they even built the complex backend. Prove the market first.
Smart. Okay. And the foundational stuff, legal structure, IP.
Right? If you're serious about venture capital, the sources are pretty clear. You're almost certainly looking at a C corporation. Investors just prefer it. It allows different stock classes, and there are potential tax advantages for them, like that QSBS exemption.
Qualified small business stock.
Exactly. Can be a big deal for early investors down the road. And then protecting your actual invention, your IP, it needs to be multi-layered. You might need patents for unique algorithms, sure, but also trade secrets for confidential data, maybe copyrights for your code, your content. It's about building defensible value, creating moats.
So putting it all together, it sounds like launching a dominant tech business in 2025 is less about a single launch moment and more about continuous learning, iteration.
Absolutely. It's ongoing, and a huge part of that is not just getting customers, but obsessively keeping them, retention. The studies on this are pretty stark. Even a small 5% increase in customer retention, that can boost profits anywhere from 25% to, believe it or not, 95%.
Wow, that is a massive return on keeping customers happy.
It really is. So yeah, sustainable growth really comes from building that loyalty, using data, using feedback, constantly evolving what you offer.
So the big takeaway seems to be you have to be a perpetual student, a student of your market, your customers, always refining, always adapting.
Precisely that. The whole entrepreneurial journey is just continuous learning, isn't it? Lean on your community, your mentors, and you keep tuning your product based on what customers actually tell you they need, building something that lives and evolves. A living solution, not a static product. Great way to put it. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into launching a dominant tech venture in 2025. We really hope this has given you some powerful insights, maybe sparked some new ideas for your own learning journey. So here's something to think about. What's one tier 1 problem out there you're curious to explore through this new lens of agentic AI? Thanks for joining us.